Well, Sooner Nation, Thunder Nation, we are back. This is the Just Okay, that is Just Oklahoma Sports Podcast. I'm one of your village idiots, Daryl. I'm here with my brother, Jared. And we are going to be talking a lot of Sooner football today, and we do that a lot anyway, Sooner sports in general. And so, again, if you end up liking the podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and help us get the word out about a podcast that'll make you feel better about yourself. So now that we're done with all that, Jared, how are we, man, on this great Labor Day Monday?
Labor Day has been laborful for me. I've been trying to get ready. I'm actually getting ready for my trip back to Oklahoma. So
Yes.
I'm trying to get all. I was actually out working in the yard when you text me and said we were gonna pod a little early or whatever. So I was trying to ran in and basically rinsed off real quick and then changed and got on here.
Nice.
But yeah, doing laundry, all that sort of stuff. So it's like it's not a bad day. It's chill, but it's one of those busy, but
Yep.
productive days, I
It's
guess. I don't know.
it's the off day that really becomes the day to get the things done that you can't get done when you're not an off day.
Yeah. So it's gonna be the next couple of days gonna be really wild. Like I said, I got stuff even going tomorrow, and then like I said, Wednesday I'm flying pretty much, like a 3/4 of the day or whatever. So, but yeah, no, I'm good. I mean, we're coming off a win. I mean, I don't know that we expected to not win, but still, a win's a win. So,
I mean, both of us,
as Dom Toretto would say, a win is a win.
a win is a win, and especially after this weekend for some teams, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. But look, you picked them to cover by a large margin, and I was kind of like, whoo.
Yeah, you want to talk about the picks a little bit real quick? We just want to go over that real quick because I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great.
Go right ahead.
So, yeah, I picked. I just want to point out, I picked them to cover, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. I was wrong. I was not positive enough. I should have given them more points because I said I believe 66 to 7 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And they covered by twice, precisely, I think. And so, I got that going for me. I also picked Florida State to beat LSU. What was our other game? Do we pick?
Utah, Florida, but I don't remember who you picked. Did you pick Utah straight up even without Cam Rising? Because I know both of us were hedging a little bit with Cam Rising.
I said no. I said I picked Utah because I said I think they like their backup quarterback. And I said their defense is legit, and their defense looked even better than I probably thought they would have looked. So yeah, I'm just saying, 3 for 3. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling good about my picks.
That's fair. I picked to cover, so I won that part, but my score was way less than what it was as well. I picked them in the 50s. I also picked them to give up, I believe, 13, 14 points. I picked Utah not to win without Cam Rising. Well, that was no problem. And I also believe I picked LSU because I thought, man, an FSU team that barely beat Oklahoma in a bowl game, I just don't know. But wow, FSU looked real good. Real good.
They looked a little shaky. They looked a little shaky to start, but they got together. They came out in the second half, and it looked like a different team in the second half.
And completely out physicaled LSU's, which was crazy. But the other out physicaling, though, was 73-0 of OU against Arkansas State. And again, as we break this down, okay, we both picked them to win by more than 30-something points. Okay, this is not some, end all be all. This isn't a defining moment for the program. And yet at the same time, it was a very, very good showing. You can't ask for much more than a shutout and basically scoring at will throughout the entire game. And when you put your 87 of your rostered players on the field and still pitch a shutout and continue to score at will, that's a very, very good day for a program. I mean, that's all you can say. Everyone executing at a very high level. Jared, I'll start with you. Let's start with, as always, we start with negatives here. Was there anything that bothered you about the game?
Man, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that we discussed a little before, so I'm not going to go into those. I'm going to let you go on your tirade. Oh,
and Jared is frozen. That's crazy. Oh, your face looks amazing, though. I absolutely
we do still
love
see
it.
though. One thing that is it. Hold on. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now, but you were absolutely gone and completely frozen on the
Yeah,
video, and
my
I'm
internet.
leaving all of it there for you. That's
Okay,
amazing.
my internet is decides at random times that it's gonna leave the chat. Okay, so sorry about that. So we are you get to see my face in motion again. You're welcome. But yeah, like the inside, the interior of the field, like the inside, the middle, we saw those, like we always saw those like slant routes that just kind of came
Mhm.
open. And we saw some of that. I think there was like two or three plays where they kind of exploited that. And then like there was even which is a little bit I mean, it kind of depends on the coverage, right? But it's like a lot of times it's you're having to have a linebacker that's kind of having to drop to give a little bit of
Yep.
coverage until somebody can help or whatever. And there was one play that's like I almost don't really blame. There was it was one of the I think it may have been their longest play of the day, where Kanik lined up
Yep.
like at the line of scrimmage and he was forced to drop.
Mhm.
And it's like as athletic as Kanik is, that's a lot to ask of a linebacker to drop into coverage and cover a guy that's going to be on a dead sprint right off the jump.
Sure.
Um, so, but outside of that, I mean, like the defense I thought looked pretty good. I don't think we saw, like, honestly, I don't think we saw a lot. Like, it didn't feel like they were doing a ton of, I haven't gone back and watched the film all the way through. So, this could be wrong, but I was like, I didn't feel like I saw like a lot of stunting or super complicated defense on, Saturday. It's pretty vanilla. So, but it looked good. So, um, but yeah, I think like the other negative is probably, I guess I'll highlight it a little bit, is just the offensive line felt inconsistent across the board a little bit. I know you're going to go into a little bit more in depth on that. Um, it just felt it felt like if we could get we had it's like we had two offensive lines. We had one that was able to go blow people off the ball and pancake everybody and be in the second level before the running back had the ball, and then we had the one that was getting knocked back 10 yards.
Mhm.
And there was not a whole lot in between. I didn't feel like so, but I know you're going to go into that. But that's kind of like my negatives. Probably I would say is on offense, the offensive line. Defense is covering the middle of the field on slants and things like that.
Yeah, I think those are both fair things to criticize. They did play a lot of basic zones, and so especially on things like RPO, it wasn't really hard to know where those holes were going to be. And even like the Kanik play that you're talking about, it was the biggest play of the day. Um, I want to criticize Kanik because he didn't quite get deep enough. He was only like 6 yards deep when that ball goes out, and you would hope for him to be deeper. But honestly, the guy that plays that play worse is Billy Bowman, right?
Right.
Who's supposed to be coming over and bracketing the receiver. And when you see the receiver catch the ball, you see that Bowman's come down into the box even with the receiver instead of over the top of the receiver, right? And so if he's over the top, that play gets negated for like 10
Well,
yards instead of
and
35.
well, and in coach speak, they both own all of the blame. If you own part of the blame, you own all the blame with your teammate, right? So I
Right.
think
Yeah.
they both played that poorly. So
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, let's not pretend like in this day and age of offense that you're not going to have some plays come
yeah,
available, right, in the midst of the day. And even still, after that, held them after a big play to kicking or at least attempting a field goal that goes bad, right? So, and then yeah, and I would say negatively for me, I would say the two things that probably were the most glaring to me of things that I want to see how the year continues to go on. There were still some problems with the offensive line. Now everybody's going to say, well, we didn't give up a sack and 73 and yada yada. And look, I'm not saying they played horrible, but ask yourself some questions. Like here's one. How many gaping holes did you see this line open up on the day? Right? I mean, like we ran the ball fine, right? But you didn't see any holes where you went, that's going to the house. And you played a defensive line that averaged like 282. And let's just be real, it's just not talented. So no talent, no size. You have size and talent. And the only run I can remember that had a huge hole was one for Tally Walker, who he gained about 12 yards on. And then there was one for Barnes where a guy basically got his toe from the side. And if he doesn't, Barnes probably takes it to the house, right? And those that's it. Like after that, it was little 3 and 4 yard chunk plays. So like, look, when I see that and I go, okay, insert K-State, that's 2 yards a run, right? Like that's not going to be 3 and 4. That's going to be 2 yards a run. So that's a problem, right? You did see offensive linemen being knocked completely off their feet. I mean, I highlighted it in the Discord. I showed a video, guy getting completely decleated, knocked backwards. You also saw guys just not finishing. Now, there were some Raym had an incredible finish in the end zone. I mean, you could tell the play was the guy in front of you maul him. He mauled him and he drove him straight in the ground, and it was beautiful, right? Guyton was doing that a lot on the day. He was pancaking a lot of guys. Caden Green pancaked a lot of guys. But I also saw like there was like one player in particular, and I'm not even going to name them to just not start a fight. But there were 4 plays out of the first 25 where there's a double team, right? They're double teaming a guy out. They do it well. The whistle has not been blown, and this particular player just stops, just turns around and starts doing this. What's going on over here? And I'm going like, what are we doing? Like, if that's your job is to block that guy, block that dude into the freaking ground and let him know this is coming all day long. And instead, we blocked for about a second and a half, and the mentality you could tell was the back should be through by now. Let me just see what else is happening. And it's like that. You can't do that. Like, finish a play.
It's
like just finish the play.
It does feel like I did see like the positive side. I guess I'll give a because it's like the offensive line is always, I feel like, going to be a little bit of positive and negative, right? Especially early in the season. But I did feel like we had a little bit more of that lunch pail mentality overall.
Yes.
No, I'm not saying everybody, but it was more there. I saw some plays I even texted in our group that after the play, I saw them getting in people's faces and being like, you're going to go get knocked down again. You know, it's like, dude, that's like, you know, I don't want to be like, you know, too much clearly, but it's like, you want some of that attitude in your guys to be like, it's kind of like, you know, it's funny because I just saw somebody tweet this a couple days ago. I think it was maybe on Saturday. That was like Gerald McCoy when he got in trouble because one of the coaches was like, why do you keep helping them up? When he got to the NFL, one of the coaches was like, why do you keep helping up the O lineman whenever you're after the play? And he's like, because I'm just going to put them back down on their butt again. Yeah. You know, he's like, he didn't care. Like, that was just his mentality was, I'm going to put you on your butt and I'm going to talk trash and everything, but I'll pick you up, but I'll put you back down. But anyways, that's something we haven't seen on the offensive line in a long time. So I did see some of that. So I agree, but it does feel like we need a little bit of that. Like you said, you want guys that are just going to finish the guys to the ground. Like there was one of my favorite O linemen for, like I said, for that 2017 team was Drew Samia, because he was that guy that was always just burying his dude in the ground. And there was times where you're like, okay, you're flirting with a little too much, but that's what you have to have. You have to have that mean edge where you're getting that close to too much.
Yeah, exactly. And the one guy you can see playing that way throughout the entire game is Tyler Guyton, right? Like him and maybe Caden Green to me were the most like truly wanting to go out and assert their dominance there. So I don't think this offensive line is going to be bad. I thought overall they played really well. But when you watch those little moments against a team as inferior as this, I want to project in my mind when we play the elite teams, when you do play Texas, when you do play K-State, how does that look? That's how I try to frame it in that mindset. And I'm even trying, and we're going to ask this question a little bit, SEC. This was an SEC D-line. How would that look? How do we feel about it now, right? And so I'm asking that. My number 2 thing, and this one's hard because I'm going to put it in my positive as well. But I still want to see more separation for the wide receivers. I thought they had a great day overall. I thought their catching was so much better. I thought their hands were way better, but you still didn't see a lot of separation from the DBs within the game. And I did want to see that. I'd say those are kind of my 2 glaring weaknesses on the day for me. So those would be my 2 negatives. So now going positive, what were your biggest positive takeaways from the day after a 73-0 win?
Well, I mean, I think that for one, Dylan Gabriel looked way better than he did last year. Way better than he did last year. There was the one throw, which, really I started thinking about. There was the one throw, the D ball that ended up getting called pass interference because the guy just literally tackled. I think it was
Andrell, yeah.
Yeah,
Is Andrell Anthony, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was him or Farouk or whoever. But anyway, he just, if it wasn't for that, it was like, dude, that was underthrown by probably 10, 15 yards. I mean, it was really
Oh
bad,
yeah.
but of course I was looking and I was like, okay, that was late in the game for him. That was like a 60, 70 yard throw. That was a long throw and it was 100 something degrees outside. The dude was probably just cooked, you know? So, but like I said, again, overall looked great. I don't, his QBR, I think was like, I thought I saw somebody on, like, I think ESPN said he had like the number 5 or 6 QBR and like something crazy. It
Oh
was a
yeah. I
tiny
mean, he
big
only had
throw.
3 incompletions, no intercept. I mean, it was dumb. It was
Yeah.
dumb.
So yeah, Gabriel looked good. Again, inferior opponent. We were saying the same things about him last year against inferior opponents. So I think, this coming week will be a better test for him. But yeah, so Gabriel looked good. And then on defense, I'm gonna go probably like the D line. I'm gonna say the D line. And I don't think they played
Mm,
perfect. And it was really hard to tell with how much they were having to rotate because again, there was a lot of rotation.
yeah.
I think partially due to the heat, partially to get some guys experience, to do some experimentation in a game setting, a lot of things. But the thing that I liked is there was physicality. And this kind of goes for the whole defense, but I saw guys that were really trying to maul people. There was the play by, was that no, it wasn't Kobe. Gentry. It was Gentry where Gentry just absolutely blew up a receiver. They did a little bubble
Yep.
pass, and
Yep.
Gentry just absolutely. And I was like, dude, I haven't seen that since
Yeah.
when, right? Um, and so there was a lot of physicality, a lot of, like I said, again, bring your lunch pail, and that's what you're gonna need in the SEC. I don't know. It's hard to say because, like I said, Arkansas State isn't a good measuring stick for how good is that team going to be. Are they going to be able to push around a team like Texas or whoever, or anybody in the SEC for that matter? But I just like that we saw them be physical. I like to see them have high motor.
Mhm.
And again, I didn't really feel like there was that I kept getting lost on who was on the field because like there didn't seem to be a huge drop off. Like we kind of talked about before in the preview of that depth, competitive depth really was kind
Mhm.
of showing. I feel like because it's like I mean, again, it's an inferior opponent, so it's gonna be harder to see. But I didn't see like Bothroyd go off and somebody come on and then you're like, oh man, we suck now, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's like there was a lot of depth and a lot of that. So I really like the D lines play in those regards. So how about you?
Sure.
What's your positives?
I mean, I gotta echo and just come alongside, so I'll get 2 more on, but like DG, man, hit a slant route in stride, hit another over the middle throw in stride. I mean, his worst over the middle throw on the whole day was the deep ball to Anthony that you were just alluding to. And dude, that ball was weird. It was like he tried to throw it as high as he could throw it I don't know if it slipped. I don't know if he's trying to work on kind of that bucket deep ball. But also people that were in the stadium, I know several said like Anthony was open like a second and a half into that route. And they said, look, if he'd have just thrown it like over the middle, as soon as he put his back foot in the ground, it's a touchdown. And instead he waited and waited and waited and waited and then launched it. But again, that may have been like, we're up by 50. Like, I just want to try this throw and I'm going to see what happens. But again, the other thing I would say is in those middle throws, and again, this is my opinion. I'm no quarterback guru, but if you go back and watch, what did I say last year? Whenever he tried to throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is when he threw those balls 6 feet over their heads, right? Like it was always he did not do that yesterday. On every little crossing route that he threw, he just stepped in and he threw it. Did it have a ton of zip on it? No, but it was accurate and it was where it needed to be and allowed you to move the chains, right? And that's what you need. That's what it needs to look like. That's what it needs to be. My other two, I got to start here, man. Gavin Freeman, the hype is real. The hype
Yeah.
is real. Like, and I know that we saw the play last year and all, but I mean, good Lord, man. I mean, even the muffed punt, right? Like, totally whiffs it. It goes all the way back to like the 6 yard line. He turns it into like still a 25-yard gain from the 6 yard line. I mean, that dude, ball player, a ball player. Like, this is not, oh, we're giving lots of kudos because he's a little short white walk-on guy. Like, his name is everything. G Freaky is the real deal. He is a freak of nature athletically. Super fun. Gonna be a guy that makes a lot of plays. I think that's there. Probably the other big positive for me is probably the secondary. Across the board. I mean, think about your big hits in the game. Gentry, Pearson annihilating the quarterback who was pretending like he was still in bounds and said, if you're going to pretend like you're in bounds, then I'm going to kill you on the sideline, and did.
Yeah.
He had another big hit the very next play to cut down the running back in the backfield. Peyton Bowen had 2 big hits. Like,
Yep.
one didn't take the guy to the ground, but it's what stood the guy up and allowed Kanai Walker to strip the ball and get the fumble recover. I mean, they just look good, and physically, good Lord, man. Gentry, Peyton. It's weird to say. Go ahead.
No, go, you get your point out.
Well, Pearson I thought he looked lean.
Yeah.
In this secondary, like at times, like depending on who was out there, I was like, Reggie Pearson looks small. Like, what's happening right now?
Well, it's even, I was going to say, like, there was a play where Bowen hit somebody and I had to replay it because I was like, what linebacker was over there? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he looks so much bigger than we're used to seeing, even at linebacker. Like, he's so much more filled out and just broad. And we haven't seen that at OU in a decade, you know? So, it was good. Like I said, Bowen's going to be, that kid could be really, really special. So, I mean, I know that's a lot to say after one game, but it's like, he made a lot of headsy plays is what I would say. Like, there's not even like, oh, we just out physical. There was plays where he was actually making very smart plays, and seems to have got a good grasp for as early on as he is in his career.
Yeah. And then there were some interesting things in the game. I think, just from a observation standpoint, I thought Kanak looked more comfortable, but there's still work to be done there. I don't want to sit here and say he had a bad game, but he didn't have a good game either. But he looked more comfortable. Danny Stutzman looked in control of the defense. I thought that Harrington, like, again, I didn't think he did anything that just flashed on the day, but he looked good, looked in position. Andrell Anthony lived up to the billing. I thought our running back depth looked up to the billing. Blake Smith, man, is this guy a game changer? No, but he's going to be a bigger factor, I think, than we realize. And I think he's going to be a bigger contributor than we gave him credit. I think we really undervalued him. And for good reason.
You kind of scoffed at him in the preview. You kind of scoffed at it a little bit.
I mean, a little, yeah. I mean, like,
please never do that voice again ever in your life.
But he played well. He had a good catch, run up the sideline. So I mean, I thought that those things were really, really good, and I like that we played a lot of players. I think another guy that flashed, but you can see that they're raw and they still need work, is PJ. There was a couple plays where you were like, holy cow, and then there were some others that was like, oh, he just got, that wasn't great. Like, he's got some work still to do, so he just is going to need snaps to continue to get better and to continue to work his way through it. So but I mean, all in all, good day. And as far, go ahead.
I was just say the other guy that I want to touch on is that, like, I didn't even realize like how small he looked on the field. Cade McIntyre.
Yeah.
Like, he looks lean, like on the, I mean, it's, I guess it's, I mean, we already knew he was going to be a little bit smaller, but it's like, dude, he looks like a tall receiver, like a lanky receiver. You know what I mean? So, but anyways, but he did have a play, which surprised me a little bit, that like Stogner, they didn't put Stogner in, like he didn't have a catch on the day. So
yeah, and you almost wonder if that's by design, right? Like, let's hold what we want to use him and how we want to use him. But I thought it was also very clear that they were really trying to do some things that forced Stogner to block more. Like, for instance, we were talking about this after the game that I didn't see live. I mean, the pace was so fast. But they actually did an unbalanced line. So they actually moved Rouse over to right tackle with Guyton playing inside of him, and then Matauer playing inside of that, and Raymond. Then on the other side was Bird and Austin Stogner. So essentially playing Stogner as the left tackle, right, in the play. And it felt like that they were just almost using this game for him as, we're just going to make you block the whole time just to work on that so that we can do some things.
There was one that I did see live where I don't even remember what, it turned into a decent game, but there was one where they did him as a pulling, like basically they pulled him across the whole formation. He actually lit his dude up. So I think, I mean, I'm interested to see what he's going to do, because we heard we saw clips. They posted clips of him catching some crazy balls in camp, and he was making some plays. So I'm interested to see. Like I said, they're going to play it close to the vest, I think,
Yeah.
because it's kind of the same thing. We're gonna see a little bit more this week, because it's SMU. It's gonna be a tougher opponent, but it's like they're gonna hold as much as they can back until the Red River game. I mean, that's just fact.
But
That's the same every year.
It was interesting the things they did show, like that unbalanced line. The other thing
Right.
that I did not realize until listening to another podcast, thank you, Gabe Eichert, because you could see the whole field. I was not there, but they actually had I think a series or so where they actually had Dasan and Harrington on the field at the same time. And I find that fascinating. Like the way you can move those pieces around and what you could do there could be really fun. I thought Kip Lewis, man, your guy definitely flashed and definitely showed. I thought Kobe did too, though.
Yeah. Well,
and
that's the
I
thing.
was shocked that he got in so late in the game and yet did nothing but find the football and I thought he looked really light on his feet. And I know that's kind of been the complaint with Kobe is that he's not swift footed, but I saw two things from him. I thought he looked really quick. Again, a lesser opponent, but two, every time he was in on a tackle, his person did not go forward. They say about running backs, they're always falling forward. Kobe is always falling forward. Like whoever he hits, he's the one falling forward and knocking them back. So I thought that those guys showed out really well too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I do want to like preface everything that we just said, or I guess it's not preface since it's after, but again, a very inferior opponent. It's we need to temper expectations somewhat. We're not going to play.
Yes.
I know the big stat that Venables touted after the game was 87 players played. You're not going to do that against probably even SMU. You're not going to do that against Texas or K-State or whoever. Like we're not going to see this all season as far as that amount of people playing. So they're going to start dialing people in. But yeah, like I said, at the same time, it's like I was very impressed. So
yeah. And real quick, I know because on Twitter, I should have put this in the notes. I know the big discussion on Twitter was we had no pass rush throughout the entire game. And look, I charted every play all the way through into halfway through the third quarter. And I would just simply say this, there's actually about 7 plays where there actually is what would be scored a pressure on the quarterback because they were in the vicinity. But I can only maybe find 3 plays in all of those where they kind of play actioned and actually did some form of a drop back pass. And either he's getting rid of the ball immediately after that, or there's a guy there. There's one like where Bothroyd, it looks like actually hits his arm. There's another where he gets hit very hard as soon as he lets the ball go. You did have a sack on one of those as well. So they did nothing but bubble screens, very quick hitch routes, things like that. I think I timed several of them of their pass plays and it was under 2 seconds before the ball was out of you're not getting to the quarterback in under 2 seconds. So I don't think you need to take a lot from that yet. SMU will be the one where we're going to find out if we have a pass rush or not. I think that's where we're going to see if that is there. So a couple notes real quick is injuries. R. Mason Thomas, in case you didn't notice, did not play at all and apparently is still dealing with an ankle injury. There's some saying that he could have played, but we also need to remember he was in a boot almost 2 weeks ago in camp. That had been mentioned, noted, reported, all the things. So the fact that they're still not playing him makes me wonder what's happening there. Sawchuk was held out. If you go back and watch the game, he is in uniform. He is out there, but apparently it's a hamstring, which is also probably, or what I've heard was his issue last year as well. And with guys as twitchy as he is, they're going to take their time. I don't think you're going to see Sawchuk for a while. I think you just need to be prepared. Texas.
I think you. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think you're gonna see him maybe for Big 12 play when it starts, but even then maybe not. Hamstrings are so that that's the thing is they're so weird. Sometimes guys can heal from them and be ready in 2 weeks, and sometimes it takes two months for somebody to heal from one fully. So
correct. And then 2 more really quick. Stoops obviously in a sling during the game. We have heard from our good friend over at Bud, Barry, Bob, and Beer, Steven, has mentioned that he actually saw him around Norman later on in the weekend, and he did not have his sling on. There's been several saying that he could have gone back in the game. The way I heard it said on a discussion was if it was OU Texas or a playoff game, he would have come back in and played in the game. Dasan McCullough went out with an ankle injury rolled up on by Danny Stutzman. I would think that Dasan McCullough is out for a couple weeks. And again, I don't have an inside information, but it did look like it was way high up on his ankle where it got folded up on. If it is a high ankle sprain, obviously that's a pain tolerance issue, but why do you want to play
you
him
don't
and
want to
potentially linger that on, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see it. And Cade McIntyre, I've also heard, may have a fractured hand potentially at the end of the game. I did not see him come out, but Sooner Scoop was talking about that he might have a fractured hand and could be out for a little bit, which is a bummer. He had a pretty good little play and showed some ability and some speed. And so, yeah. So Jared, in a quick wrap up, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, so let me ask this. What did you see in that game that makes you feel like, or an area that you saw in that game that is still very much not SEC ready? And what did you see in the game that makes you feel like it could be SEC ready by the time we get to the SEC?
I think the offensive line as a whole, like as a unit, right? I think there's a couple of guys
ready or
right?
not ready.
Not ready. Sorry.
Okay.
So there's a couple of guys on that unit that I think could be SEC ready, right? But those guys are probably going to be gone for one. But yeah, just as like a whole, I don't feel like it was. I don't feel like they're SEC ready. Just to be honest, I don't think across the board they have the physicality. And I don't want to start an argument with somebody, and somebody's Dark J Rods want to fire Beanbo. But yeah, and it's one of those things that I think some of that's going to be getting. I think you're still a little bit offensive line for one is typically not a position that you get a kid come in as a freshman and then just immediately has a massive impact. Like that happens on occasion, right? But for the most part, it's like you just don't see guys really show out as a lineman until they're a sophomore, junior,
right?
A lot of times. So let's hold the phone and see who do what.
Oh, you glitched out for a second again.
Oh,
but you're back.
Yeah, sorry, internet. Great. So the one I would say is SEC ready is this is probably gonna be a cheap pick, but is QB play. Like Jackson Arnold looked phenomenal.
Boy, didn't he though?
I mean, the dude, and I want to give a little bit of brilliance. I want to give a shout out to maybe Venables, maybe to Levy, whoever made this decision, the staff as a whole. They actually let him go out, and he actually got they made him do a QB draw, and he ran up and laid the lumber on somebody. And I was like, that's brilliant in the sense of you're getting him in his first college game. You're going against an inferior opponent. You're not worried about some 300-pound guy from Alabama just crushing him, right? Or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can get him into a game and let him get contact and get him to shake that nerves off of being a college football player. And I just thought that was like a little brilliant play that they had in there for him, and he executed perfectly. I think he had a rushing touchdown. So I mean, the dude looked good. He looked real good. So it's one of those things that I'm not. Let me preface this by saying I don't want DG to go down or to go out, but if DG was to go down, I'm not scared to death that we're going to lose 49-0 to Texas, right? So
no, we will not. No, I 100% agree with you. Matter of fact, I was actually listening before I got on here. I've been trying to prep for our SMU preview pod, and so I was watching a pod that was previewing the OU SMU game already, and the OU person on the pod said, I think D-line coaches are not going to want to knock DG out of the game because they might actually fear what's behind him. And that's no knock on Dylan Gabriel. It's just he's got that to him. And look, got a free play early to go deep, launched it. And as Gabe Ikert said on the radio broadcast, that might have been the most sexy incompletion I've ever seen in my life. And then settled in and did not miss another pass after that. Goes 10 for 10 the rest of the way, which, I mean, that said a lot about him. To miss a big throw like that and then to come back and just laser in was great. So anyways, SEC not ready. I'm going to say linebackers. How about that?
Okay.
I'm going to say the linebackers. You know, you really can tell, even just watching that LSU game, as much as they got beat and drummed, you just see their linebackers compared to ours. Like Kip Lewis, finding the ball everywhere. But when you see Kip Lewis physically and you see LSU guys, it's just like, dude, it ain't the same, man. It ain't the same. And even Kanak does not look the same. Like we've got a ways to go there. And even just from a mental capacity, like I said, there were some, I don't know if bust is the right word, but again, 2 linebackers in the same gap. I mean, just little things like that. We've got a ways to go on. And I still would also say the same. I'm very nervous about the offensive line going in there. As far as SEC ready, God, I have to say I agree. The quarterback's not going to be the problem. We are fine there. I would say the other thing, though, that I believe looks like that next year it would be SEC ready is the secondary. I mean, when you think about the potential, like let's just say that even like Bowman decides to leave, I believe your starting safeties next year are going to be RSJ and it's going to be Peyton Bowen. Like, think about those guys. Gentry Williams on one side, either Kenai Walker apparently, or another guy that played a lot that we haven't mentioned, Jacoby Johnson played early and often in this game, and he looks physically ready to go.
Let me
look
ask you
across
this.
that secondary. Whoo,
Let me ask you this. Do you think, I don't think Bowen will necessarily start unless there's an injury, but do you think that he gets significant playing time even when we get into the heart of the schedule? Do you think he's going to be like that
yes.
50-50 kind of guy?
I do. I was shocked they waited as long as they did to put him in the game. But then once they did, he played a lot. And again, just trying to make sure that he's comfortable and in a situation where he can be confident and he was everywhere. And so, yes, I think with Bowen, you're going to just continue. And I think RSJ, I think when RSJ gets clear, which I think will be this week, I think you're going to see him get in the game. And I think as you get closer and closer to Texas, he's going to play more and more and more. Now, Pearson played well. I thought Key played well, but I just don't think you can deny that RSJ, from what we heard about camp and summer and spring, was looking fantastic until the injury. And he just looks different, even than Key. Key looks amazing, but RSJ looks different. And I think they're going to play that guy a lot.
If Bowen is able to play at that level and like as fundamentally sound and everything as he did against Arkansas State, it's like, how do you keep him off the field? He's a more physically imposing and athletic version of everybody else that's at that position right now.
Yeah. I don't disagree. But the secondary, what Jay Valai and Brandon Hall have done with that secondary, what Coach Schmidt has done with that secondary. Some of those guys are Gentry's a holdover, right? RSJ's a holdover. And they look different and they're playing different. But that secondary is SEC ready. I believe that will play with anybody in that conference. So, all right, moving on really quickly, just a couple of notes recruiting wise, because there were some visitors this weekend that I think are worth noting. Let's actually start with Daniel Okoye, because obviously D-line recruiting is something that everyone is still high on. And, oh, by the way, we are 4 days away from Mr. Nigel Smith announcing his commitment, which would be a huge get. But I think Daniel Okoye being on campus, it seems to have gone really well. He showed a picture of an amazing steak and lobster tail that they gave him for dinner. So that could not have swayed him not to come here, right? Like that's got to win some points. And so I think that's a big one and would be a huge get for OU. Then you have Daniel Akin Kunmi. I don't know how to say it. I don't know. I have no idea. But came all the way over from the England area, flew across the pond, if you will, and is a part of the NFL Youth Academy over in England. Looks the part physically, seems to have had a great visit. I do think he will take some other visits, so I don't expect a commitment, but it does seem like OU is well out in front on this one. But I also think, look, man, he's got a chance to come over and visit a ton of places in the U.S. for free. You take advantage of that, right? Like you don't you don't bypass that for a commitment. So I think he'll do that before he commits. The other one that is interesting to me, and I want to make this clear, I still believe that A&M holds a big lead here. But you never, ever, ever discount an unofficial visit. Okay. You do not discount unofficial visits. When someone drives on their own dime, gives hotel on their own dime, does everything on their own dime to come. In one Terry Bussey, 5-star athlete, who I believe that they would take as a receiver, and then he gets to watch Jackson Arnold go 10 for 10 and look smooth doing it.
Actually, by the way, you are actually inaccurate because ESPN has him listed as 11 for 11. Just throwing it out there.
My God, I'm sorry. So 11 for 11. That can't hurt your recruitment, right? Like, and again, there has to be interest. There has to be interest. If you like, he could have gone to A&M this weekend. He didn't. He's here. Like, so again, I still would say this is 85, 90% an A&M lean, but you never discount these kinds of, I mean, let's also we talked about it last year with oh my gosh, why is he slipping my name? The Evans kid who went to Georgia.
Why is he
took a random unofficial? Huh?
He said, why is he slipping my name? You're just an idiot. I just wanted to highlight it. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. He takes an unofficial and all of a sudden it goes from OU to Georgia like that. Yeah. I mean, you just never can discount what those little visits can do.
And you also have to put into perspective the fact of it's being A&M specifically too, with a lot of the guys they have committed. Because look, if Jimbo goes out and has a 6-6 year or whatever, if he doesn't have really, in my opinion, a hell of a year this year, I don't see how he stays employed. Right. Like, I mean, even if they go 7-6 or whatever, I don't see how that's going to be good enough for the amount of money that the A&M, boosters, alumni, and all that have been dumping into that program. The expectation for him is national championship or SEC championships, and he's not even getting close to that. He's scratching for winning seasons. So you want to set yourself up in position that if it starts going off the rails, you can pick up the guys that you're going to be set yourself up in a good position to get some of those guys. So,
and look, like he most likely is an offensive recruit for them as well. And I'm sure Jimbo's feeding him right now. Hey, we brought in Bobby Petrino to change our offense, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be that, and it's A&M, and it's the SEC. Well, if that offense looks like trash, like it has the last 2 or 3 years under Jimbo, well, again, like, do you take notice of that? And again, he's getting to see the quarterback this weekend that's going to be his quarterback, right? Jackson Arnold is going to be, whereas the kid that plays for A&M right now is a sophomore. So by next year, that's probably could be his last year and he's out of there and gone. You don't know what's behind that. So there's just a lot of things within this weekend, right? That could be big. Not only that, but you have David Stone in the boat now. So you can say, hey, we just brought him in. We got Nigel Smith on the way. I mean, like, there's just a lot that's cooking in there.
Well, and
I'm not going to say that OU has zero chance here. I'm going to say they're trailing, but they definitely don't have a zero chance here.
And I can't think of the name of everybody that but I mean, even after the season, when you look at what Lebby has done with quarterbacks, I would argue he's done more with quarterbacks than has been done under Jimbo. Right. 100%. Because what Jimbo has Jameis, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then he has Kellen Mond. That's his 2 guys that he could try to make some selling point of, like, I know what to do with QBs, even though he used to be touted as Mr. QB Whisperer. Right. And I would argue that Lebby's done more that, like he's been able to, he may not have a Heisman winner or whatever in his resume, but it's like he's also had more quarterbacks that have had high levels of success and even been able to go and, have careers in the pros and all those sorts of things. So it's like, I just don't see him being a guy that's going to be able to keep selling for long that I'm this, like, I will have a good QB, right? Like, as much as we all want to hate on Lincoln and stuff, when you look at Lincoln, it's like he can sell, like, even though I know everybody's going to be mad about him selling all the Oklahoma products that he had, it's like he can sell, look, I can develop quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Jimbo can't do that. So anyway.
Nope. Yeah, 100%. So Look, great weekend. Great weekend. The only other negative I would give very quickly, and will just make everybody mad because I was not in Norman for the game, but for all the griping and complaining of no tailgating allowed on Lindsay Street, and for literally to have 3 people text me the day of the game and say it is a ghost town in Norman, Oklahoma, is a travesty. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not. I've never been a tailgater because my family didn't do it. But for all these people that say that tailgating needs to be that, then you have to show up and do it. You have to show up and make it what it is.
And in the defense, it was I don't know how hot it was. Obviously, wasn't I was in
hot.
Florida. It was stupid hot and all that. But yeah, so I am interested to see. But again, you look at the SEC country, and it was at least all the shots I saw of the SEC stadiums had a ton of tailgaters. So that is something that we have to work on. But
100%.
but yeah, and hey, we're gonna be there this weekend. We're gonna be at SEC.
Yes.
So
live updating in stadium, looking at, which by the way, a quick shout out to a former Sooner, one and only Corey Roberson, who has been on the pod with us before. Matter of fact, twice, right? We had Corey on, and he had a pick. What I texted him and said, bro, you had the thick pick 6 on the week. Homeboy gets through the line, tips the ball, catches it, and runs it in for the pick 6 himself. I mean, it was a heck of a play.
I think we're cheering for him, even if he hadn't been on the pod. I think it's, like
great guy.
Yeah, great guy.
Family.
So I mean, I may not be cheering for him as hard this week, but you know what I mean? Outside of that, I'll be cheering for him.
Absolutely. I said, hey, rack you up some stats while we still beat you by 30. That's the plan for the weekends. What I texted him, what I sent him, but be cool to see him in town this weekend. Now, Jared, you have brought up an idea for us, right?
Okay.
You have brought up an idea for a segment. Hit us up with this and kick us off on it as well. Why don't you?
So it was week 1. I feel like this week 1 was like really crazy. Like there was more stuff happening. Like you had the incredible hype around the TCU Colorado game, which actually delivered. You had there was a lot of there was actually like a lot of bigger matchups. There was a lot of upsets. I guess unfortunately for us this year, a lot in the Big 12. But like it was just a crazy week. But there was a lot of like media worthy things around college football this week. And so I was like, let's come up with a cringe thing of the week, and then we'll come up with like a legit thing of the week. So I'll kick us off with my cringe thing of the week because I want to go Brian Kelly. Because I watched that game yesterday, watched some of his post-game clips. Dude, I just the guy's a jerk. I don't know that anybody's going to even argue. I don't even think LSU fans or Notre Dame fans or anybody's going to argue that. But here's my thing. And I don't want to go on a rant too much because I just really don't like the guy. And this is what I said when I did my pick is because I said I didn't think that he was going to be able to build a culture like somebody like even what's Norvell is going to be able to do at Florida State, right? Or I don't think he's a culture builder. I think he can recruit his butt off, but I don't know that he can build a culture. And I think for the reason is even when he tried to take some of the blame, I felt like he came out. And so first of all, they interviewed him and they were like, what do you think of and he said, well, I think of execution. I think we should just line up all of our players and just execute them. And I was like, who says that, for one? And then 2, in the post game, in the actual press conference, he came out and said, well, we just thought that we were the 2-time national championship Georgia Bulldogs, and we would just do what we wanted to do, and blah blah. And I was like, okay, one, I get what you're trying to say to some degree, but it's right. It always felt like when he would try to take some of the blame, when he would say oh, well, it's my fault, but the players didn't, they thought they were too good, or it's my fault, but the players didn't execute the game plan. It was always it always feels like he only partially owns it. I'm not saying that he can't blame players, right? That's fine. But it's it never feels I've never seen him, and maybe somebody, from Notre Dame fans or whatever will say, oh, he did this all the time or whatever. But it's he just never has owned it. So I just was really cringe that he just keeps. I don't understand. That's one thing that I'll give him. Here's the bonus, and this is the end of my rant. He must be the best recruiter in the nation for him to slam his players as much as he does and throw them under the bus and be so negative about them every time there's adversity and still land top recruits. I don't understand it. I don't know how those players like him. I don't know how anybody likes him. So there's my cringe. What's your cringe of the week, though?
Oh man, I'm really not sure. Um, no, yeah, I think the cringe of the week was TCU losing to that Colorado team. I think that really was my most cringe moment of the week. I mean,
You couldn't come up with
look,
anything
man, that
else?
I couldn't think of anything else. I could the only other thing I could think of cringe wise. Oh, what made me cringe in the week?
I mean,
No,
like
what
my
do you got?
well, I was just gonna say like the cringe thing. Well, the why I don't think that's necessarily so cringe is like when you look at it, they do have Travis Hunter, who was the number one recruit in the
Yeah,
nation, what, 2 years
right.
ago.
That's true. That's
Um,
true.
Dion's son was actually, I think, fairly highly rated. So it's like
Yeah, he was
they
like a
have
2-3 star guy.
yeah, but I mean they did have some athletes, and TCU was like nobody knew. I don't think anybody knew what TCU was going to be, right? So in a way, it's like
That's true.
while it isn't like I wouldn't say it's not a shock, it's also kind of not that big of a shock. So anyway, but go ahead. So
Okay. All right. Well, then how about Baylor? Does that make you more happy that Baylor got run
yeah,
off the field in week one? Like,
did
and
Dave
dude, I don't
Aranda?
understand it. I think Dave Aranda's a really good coach,
Yeah,
but
we've talked
my
about that for
Lord.
we've talked about that ad nauseum that we thought he was the best coach in the Big 12 even.
Yeah. And like, I'm sorry, like at this point, I'm kind of on the side now of please keep losing games and Brent hire Dave Aranda as an analyst. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I I don't know what's going on there. And I mean, it's cringe all the way down because I believe they're still playing a quarterback that Dave Aranda chose to keep while he sent another guy away who has at least bounced around on some practice squads in the NFL. And you've gone with a guy who can't do anything. Like, I I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on at Baylor for them to be, I mean,
Well,
not
and
just getting beat, but getting drummed off the field.
I think well, and the other thing is the another cringe one for the Big 12, Texas Tech, man. Those fans got humbled real quick because Big 12 or
Yeah,
the Texas Tech
but let's
fans
not
were
pretend like Wyoming's not a good football pro. You know what I mean?
no,
Like
yeah,
for its
they're
level.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean it is what it is, but it's for the fan base that I've heard and seen on Twitter that we're gonna run the
Yes.
Big 12 and we're gonna win it this year and
Yes.
we're gonna keep running it from here on out. It's like, yeah, you didn't beat
You
Wyoming. I
yeah.
mean, there's
And
better teams in
again,
the Big 12 than Wyoming. So
sure, on the road, they had a huge weather delay for several. I mean, there's a lot of things, right?
it's
But
almost the
still, you
opposite. You
got
remember that year that OU they came to OU and there was because I was there. There was like a 2 hour rain delay, and then they
yes.
came out and the team just looked terrible and they ended up beating OU by like a
Yes.
field goal. It was almost like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Very similar scenario. But I mean, look, man, they were just out physicaling Texas Tech. I mean, it was just yeah, it was a weird scenario. So you know what? The cringe might just be the Big 12. At least let me say it this way. The teams that everybody was propping up as the good teams in the Big 12 did not look great. Even Texas did not look great in
well,
their win. Like
can
so
I
poor
can
so on.
I
So I would say the cringe was Texas as a whole, or I mean
let
Big
me
12 as a whole.
I know we would I'm sure we may get into this preview or when we do our preview pod and all that, but I do want to say Texas's defense looked pretty legit. I did think their defensive line looked good. I did think the defense looked better. The offense just looked. It was really weird because Xavier Worthy made some crazy plays. Xavier Worthy's probably the best receiver in the Big 12, maybe one of the top 3 or 4 in
Oh
college
yeah.
football.
Yeah.
Um, he's really good, and he made some crazy plays. So he's always going to be a threat. And it's like Quinn Ewers just didn't get going very quickly.
No.
Um, so there's a little bit
O-line
to
didn't
that.
look great.
Yeah, the O line kind of got bullied a little bit, a couple of plays. So and you're playing Rice. Um, so yeah, and I saw some Texas fans melting down about that. But anyway, but yeah, there's a lot of cringe. The Big 12 as a whole did not look great. That's what's funny is I actually saw that reminds me, I saw an ESPN article that was it was like the 2 early predictions or overreactions from week 1, and it's going to be OU versus UCF for the Big 12 title because they were the only 2 teams that looked dominant in their wins, which by the way, I guess another a sub cringe Did you see what UCF tweeted during their game when they were playing Kent State?
No.
Oh, it got deleted, but they posted a picture of their QB on the phone, like talking to the booth or whatever, and it said, "Somebody please call the National Guard." It's Kent State, which is where in the 60s, I think it was, there was the National Guard. And so they deleted it, and I was like, bro, you can't during that game. You can't. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a bad
but
decision.
it's gonna be my cringe for the rest of the year might be UCF fans until they hopefully get humbled, because good God. I live in Orlando for people that don't know, and it is their fan base is as I may dislike them or interacting with them more than I dislike interacting with OSU and Texas fans combined, maybe.
Nice.
So anyway, but
what about your most legit? Yeah, what was your most legit of the week?
I think I might steal yours. Because you're the one that sent it to me. I didn't even see it until you sent it to me. The Jackson Arnold t-shirt.
Oh,
his 2007 Big 12, where it was OU beat Missouri. And it was a little bit of a very little tip of the cap to Williams-Nwaneri to say, we want you, we're better than that. So it was like, because I saw some people, like, it was really funny because I saw it after you sent it to me. I saw some other people tweeting about it. They're like, I don't get it. And it's like, it's a very subtle thing and it's very specifically aimed. So
yes,
but yes,
especially when you consider that Jackson Arnold was like 4 years old or 3 years old when that game happened. Like, if you do the math, like, it's something dumb. Like, this isn't some shirt that he got when he was 12 and he's been wearing around. That shirt is so old. Like, he purposely went and found a OU versus Missouri Big 12 championship game shirt.
He probably had to spend, you think about it, it's like when you buy stuff like that, a lot of times you have to spend like 4 times the cost of what it was new to get something that's that old. But yeah, that was really good. And also just the fact, it doesn't matter. I was like, I actually feel like, I mean, we haven't got to see a lot of his interviews and stuff, I guess, as a whole, and it's still early in his career. He just seems to be glad to be in Oklahoma, like to be at Oklahoma. Like his touchdown celebration on his run was him doing, OU, and you know what I mean? It's like a lot of guys would have been doing other stuff, and it's like he seems very happy to rep OU. So, and that's what he said in his interviews after he committed and all that. So, but yeah, so that just legit that he's still, as a guy on the roster, still recruiting, helping recruit, and saying, "Look, we want you, Williams-Nwaneri." So, anyways, what's your legit thing?
How about this? I am going to go with Coach Norvell of Florida State, because this is a dude that got nearly run out of town like 2 seasons ago. They were asking for him to be lynched. Dude, not only did he have his team ready to play, he had a team that came out the second half and just played great, kept his cool, made some incredible calls, man. They had a 4th down and like 2 in the second half on their own side of the field. He goes for it. I mean, just a ballsy call, and he dials it up perfect for like a 40-yard gain. I mean, just some really great things in that game. But look, man, like, we say this all the time on here. While we are going to be critical of players and coaches that do bad jobs, right? We are not rooting against these people. Like, we understand these are human beings, that this is their job. This is what they want to do with their life. And unfortunately, it's on display for all of us to watch and critique. And we don't put any sweat, blood, or tears into that effort, right? And so when you see a guy that literally had to go everywhere in Tallahassee for the last year and a half of everybody saying, we wish you were gone, like, we wish that you didn't have a job, and for him to come out on national television and just whip, and I'm talking, had a team straight out physical, an SEC opponent, and especially against a guy who I just don't like as a human being, and Brian Kelly, was chef's kiss. Like, I mean, just chef's
kiss. And Norvell just seems like a good dude, right? Like, it's hard to root against him. You know what I mean? It's funny because, I will even give a shout out to the FSU fans. Because I went to the bowl game, OU versus FSU this last year at the Camping World Bowl, and which is where they played again. And the fans were incredibly nice, incredibly humble, incredibly, I said, as far as like going into a hostile environment, because that's a home game, right? Like, that's if you're playing in Orlando, that's a home game. I even told somebody, I said, it was probably, if I'm being generous, 90% FSU fans and 10% OU fans.
Right.
And, and I said they were very kind. They're very, welcoming. I said, like, so the fan base alone was very, very, welcoming and stuff. And like I said, and just like I said, he's a guy. That's what I said in my prediction was, he's a guy that can build culture. He's a guy that can build a
Yeah.
positive attitude. I honestly think, we talked, and I even said this too. I think that he's finally getting to where he's cleared out all of that bad and that negative culture that Jimbo left behind, because I think Jimbo builds a toxic culture. I think he's that guy that he can have success for a year or two, and then it
Yeah.
deteriorates because his long-term culture is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could see that, but I mean, I just like that, man. We're just such in an era of you get 2 years, right, to turn an entire program around. If you don't, you're gone, right? Like you just get kicked to the curb, and it just doesn't work that way, man. Like even the places that have done that are places that are blue bloods that are already loaded with talent, and you've just managed to have the right pieces to flip around, right? Like Bob doing that with OU back in the 2000. Urban Meyer always lands like right out of Florida. He lands at a Ohio State. Like he lands at these places where of course you can turn it around with that kind of talent and recruiting
Right.
base and whatnot. And I mean, FSU to some degree is that as well. But again, they
You're
allowed him to
fighting
have the time and he got there.
well, and it's a fertile recruiting ground. You're fighting Miami, you're fighting Florida, you're fighting Georgia, you're
Yes.
fighting Alabama. Florida is very rich in
Tough.
football down here, but there's so many teams trying to pillage it. And also, I want to
Yeah.
give a real quick bonus as a cringe and a
Oh
legit.
no.
The cringe was the Florida player who, before the Utah game, tweeted out here. He put it on
Oh.
Instagram, I believe, and it was a picture. It said "Little Stadium," so I believe obviously.
Yep.
But after the game, the Utah player put "Little Dub," so little dub. So
Wow.
like basically threw it right back in his face. And honestly, like yeah, it was just one of those arrogant things that gets thrown in your face. It's like, dude, like you got rocked. And the fact that Utah basically just dominated them.
Yeah.
Florida, woo, talk about somebody that's gonna be on a hot seat. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, and again, two teams that just got out physicaled by honestly what we would consider not good football conferences, right?
Yeah.
And then South Carolina getting beat by North Carolina, which again, I think South Carolina still has a ways to go before it's rebuilt, right? I think Beamer's going to do a good job, but again, out physical, by the ACC in 2 games. You got the Pac-12 out physicaling a
Yeah, like
top tier, what's considered. I mean,
Cal looked good. I mean, Stanford looked good. Like there was a lot of there's really the Pac-12. I mean, it's again week one, but they looked
early,
better than I
yeah,
think we thought they were going to look.
yeah. So good week, fun time. So we'll keep coming back to legit cringe every once in a while, trying to kind of pull some fun stuff out for you guys within that. And I definitely need to keep marking down some my other brother Daryl's. We haven't done it in a while. Got to get it going back. But that's our review. And so again, please comment, like, subscribe. Let us know if you agree, disagree, all the different things. We would love for you to do that. So we're having a great time. We hope you are too. I'm Daryl. That's Jared. And we will talk to you guys later.
Night, Baker.